Wave high your gilded banner, for Somerville leads the way. Our teams will fight for victory, for Somerville leads the way. We've got the gorgeous red to spur us ahead. Fairly in all that we do is for the trueness of the blue. We'll fight with all our might, for this is the day we all say Somerville leads the way.
Thank you very much for being here. And this is exciting for us as Somerville Stand Together. So my name is Ed Halloran, and I've been president of the SMA for 14 years. The SMA is a proud member of Somerville Stand Together coalition that's sponsoring this event this evening. As union president, I'm always concerned about our members as well as the community they live in. Low salaries and high rental income and ownership prices means that owning or renting in Somerville is off the table for most, if not all of our members that I represent. Training opportunities and meaningful career ladders are also lacking for many city workers. Many very good municipal workers have moved out of the city and or moved on to better opportunities that the city has failed to provide. This pandemic has only made things worse for most of us, if not all of us. In 2018, I was asked to produce a local cable show on Somerville Media Center called the Somerville Labor Show, and it focuses on labor issues in Somerville and beyond because we have a lot of viewers that watch the show. The murder of George Floyd in May of 2020 opened my eyes as I began to understand years and years of systemic racism at every level of society. In the 50 interviews we've conducted with guests on the show, the commonality is that our city has a rare opportunity to make sweeping changes to overcome systemic racism and deep social economic injustice. I grew up as a teenager in the 60s, and if I may reference a song that Bob Dylan wrote, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, because the times they are changing. There's a dire need for us to move quickly and seize the moment. Many issues that were raised by our guests address the dangers of climate change again and racial, social, economic injustice, and how we as a community can begin to make changes. Our guests often discussed green jobs, good paying union jobs, transitioning workers into those green jobs. There is an urgent need for affordable health care, childcare, housing. COVID exposed every weakness in our society, and the urgency has now become even greater. My assistant producer, Greg Hill, who's here tonight, is a member of Somerville Stands Together. He invited a man by the name of Joe Julian. He's a national leader and legend in the fight for the Green New Deal, and he was on our show. Joe is a founding president of the Labor Network for Sustainability. He spent 90 minutes with us to discuss the severity of climate change and how to overcome it by bringing together labor and environmental groups to develop a climate program of their own. That interview led to a show just a few months later with Rand Wilson, who is here tonight, SEIU Local 88, and Craig Altimos, president of 350 Mass. Our discussion was about the possibility of creating partnership in Somerville with labor unions, environmentalist groups, and other community organizations. At the close of the show, I asked Rand and Craig if they could work together to develop a program of their own, similar to what Joe Julian was talking about in the prior show. They agreed, and before we knew it, Somerville Stands Together sponsored a Labor Climate Change Summit that brought everyone together. We had two working groups that Rand mentioned, and one is from the Labor Climate Summit, Further Forward and Shovel Ready, and they've done an awesome job of envisioning a Green New Deal for Somerville. Our next speaker, Judy Leff, will go into this more detail about the vision of the two working groups. But however, in closing, a new mayor and city council gives us a great opportunity to move forward. And I'm confident that we can make it happen in Somerville. Thank you. Judy, off to you.
Thank you, Ed. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, as Ed said, in September 2020, we had a labor and climate summer. We brought together a number of us to talk about issues of equity and building Somerville and climate change, particularly. And here's a picture from our Zoom session of some of us, not all of us, but a number of us. Out of this, as Ed said, came two working groups. One was the Further Forward group. That group worked on looking at the climate forward plan that had come out, that was put up by the city of Somerville in 2018. And we wanted to look at it and just see if there might be some updates and changes that would perhaps reflect more the values and the goals that the constituent member organizations of SST had. More about that later. And the second group was the so-called Shovel Ready group, which was looking at criteria for evaluating and recommending projects that could get underway right away once we got down funding from the federal government and from state government too. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Lee, who's going to talk more about the original plan, the original climate forward plan, and what it entailed. And then I'll go on after that. Lee?
Yeah, awesome. So thank you, Judy. And just want to, again, just say welcome to everybody here this evening. My name is Lee Munier, and I am a member of SST through the Climate Coalition of Somerville, who was one of the integral groups, actually a part of the initial Climate Forward Plan creation. So we were, several of our members ended up actually part of the working groups that were put together by the city's Office of Sustainability and Environment, which was the department within the city that was in the creation of the plan and going forward in continued iterations and implementation of these plans as the department that has been given that responsibility. So anyways, I just wanted to let you know, just want to recognize that it's really that city staff and Oliver Sellers Garcia, who we reached out to in advance of this space and just sort of gave us some information about the Climate Forward Plan that we want to make sure we share with you all tonight. So that's just some background on that plan itself, a couple just things to lift up about the progress that's been made, and then just things that he wanted to, through me, let you all know are going to be next steps from the city. So this climate action plan is something to celebrate. It was a community-oriented, focused, informed process. Again, like I mentioned, an example would be those community working groups that help to inform each of the action areas that are a part of the plan. This plan stands on several years of data-driven analysis. Things that make this plan stand out. One was that the intention at least was to center equity. So whether it is centering equity to the extent that SST is necessarily asking the city to do now, that's something that we're going to talk a little bit more here, but that was definitely an intention. The thing is that, as Oliver mentioned, equity in a lot of ways is more embedded into the plan. So it's not necessarily obviously stated by just having the word equity sort of thrown out a bunch of times in the plan. An example of that equity that may not be obvious when reading through the plan is actually some of the programs that focus, the energy efficiency programs that focus on renters, when renters have traditionally, historically in Somerville and many other places have not been targeted, right, in some of these benefits. The climate action plan didn't just set achievable low goals. The focus really has been on getting started and what's needed to do so, as opposed to setting some long-term targets based on things that are out of the city's control. So it was more a question of what can we actually do now and in the near future, informed by what we have connection to and actually have control over. As opposed to other municipalities' plans, where a lot of times it was setting targets that are often unachievable and limited by resources that are outside of the municipality's control. Another amazing thing, and what's different about this plan, it was the first in Massachusetts to focus on and weave together mitigation, adaptation, and equity. And again, at least through the intention of the city to center equity. Something just lift up around progress, acknowledging wholeheartedly that the pandemic hitting all of us and in a lot of ways hitting some of those plans over the last 3 years since 2018. Even so, the Climate Forward Plan has moved forward on pretty much everything that was intended, especially with a focus on the regional coastal resilience work, which is in Action Area 13. You might be familiar with some of the work through CAS and through SEC, who were two partners with the city on rolling out social vulnerability surveys and there's going to be continued planning there along with other municipalities, including Chelsea, Everett, and Boston. Something else that had been put on hold was a consumption-based inventory, which you can read more about in Action Area 7 of the plan. And that was put on hold because of funding that was not going to be available, but now is and is moving forward. One other just thing to lift up is moving forward. So the city does, and is, I guess, hopeful in so in my dialogue with Oliver, and what he was hopeful for is that even with what SST is putting together, it's not necessarily trying to go back and say the climate forward plan, we want to just amend this plan, but what could a next iteration plan look like that best suits the moment that we're in now and meets the needs of SST, what SST is bringing forward, and the community at large. So that next iteration, at least from the city's intentions, is to begin end of 2021. And a couple other things as far as going.
Lee, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, one other thing was just given the space that we're in here with city officials, was just understanding going forward in that next iteration is that it's a responsibility of you all and for all of us to understand there's going to be trade-offs and things that we need to, that's why we're here, right? Is to be in dialogue together and bring forward what we'll all need. And
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, it's back to me again. On to the next slide. I'm sorry, why is this not going to the next? Okay. So as we've said, a group of us took on the 150-page climate forward plan to look at it. And as Lee has outlined, it was really a very broad and comprehensive plan based on some excellent data from various research plans. And we just wanted to look at it and see if we, as SST representing a number of organizations, might want to make any revisions to it. So we spent some time looking at it. And we came up with 3 goals that we wanted to focus on in the work that we did. One was to broaden participation in the planning and the implementation of the plan. For example, to have labor unions involved, community organizations, tenants organizations, organizations and groups of people who either did not take part in the original development of the plan or were underrepresented. Second, and a big goal, was to increase economic, racial, and social equity. Now, as Lee mentioned, the original plan did mention this, but it didn't go into as much depth or give as many examples as we thought should be in there to make it very, very clear what the goals were. So we wanted to focus on that. And the last thing was that we wanted to move more rapidly toward making Somerville carbon neutral with enforceable progression benchmark dates along the way. And we'll get into that more as we go along. So for example, if we look at just goal 2, increasing equity, you can read this on your screen, but I want to go back down to action area 2, Somerville Climate Forward Vision. These are examples of changes that we put into the plan to better illustrate what we were talking about. For example, in action area 2, we focused particularly on environmental justice, that issue, and the need to focus particularly on neighborhoods and populations who are vulnerable and who had borne the brunt of air pollution and extreme climate impacts. So these are just 2 of many examples of things we put into the plan. You'll see some visual examples in a couple minutes. Okay, so this is the 3rd goal. The 3rd goal was to push forward, to really speed up getting to carbon neutral. The original plan had the date of 2050 as the date to get there. We felt, given everything that was happening, the pace that was picking up of climate change and the extreme weather events, that we wanted to set a goal of 2035, which is a tough goal, but we really think we can do it in Somerville. And the benchmarks would be by 2025, we wanted to reach 50% below the 1990 level of greenhouse gases, and in 2030, reach 75%. Okay, here's an example. This and the next slide are just examples. You can't read anything of what the pages of the plan look like after we mark them up. So everything in green represents changes or additions that we made. When you get to look at the whole plan, you'll see these in. Here's another example. And in this one, all we did was put in specific dates for reaching different benchmarks or not just benchmarks, but reaching different objectives along the way. Now, this is an important slide because what we did in each of the 13 action divisions of the plan was we put in workforce implications. This was not included in the original plan at all, but we thought that everything that's going to be done toward, moving on to renewable energy and away from fossil fuels and to rebuilding the city had implications for workers. And for example, again, action area 2, improving energy performance in existing buildings. And here's just a quote of something that we wrote in as a revision. I'm just going to let you read this quickly. So again, this was an example of many examples of things that we wrote into the plan to make it more specific as to what kind of workforce implications there would be. Assessing skill levels and of jobs that were going to be created versus people who needed to be employed to see what the goals for training had to be, working with various stakeholders, providing youth training, partnering, as I said before, with labor unions in this case, to create employment standards, prevailing wages, distribution of jobs among various populations who are often overlooked.
Judy, we're at the 5-minute mark.
Thank you for telling me, and we're at the mid-mark of my comments. The other group was the shovel-ready group, and to get ready for the federal funding that was going to come down. And out of this group, and actually the two groups working together, we came up with kind of a working paper that would be very happy to share with you on getting Somerville to be a Green New Deal community. Again, you saw these before, I won't dwell on them, but it's the same kind of issues that we're addressing. So we had 3 recommendations: to adopt project standards, building workforce of the future targeting projects. I'm going to look at a couple of these. This is what we mean by the type of project labor standards that we would like to see adopted. Again, this was not in the original plan, but we put in. I'm going quickly, folks. This is building the workforce of the future. Again, focusing on workforce development, building skills and knowledge of Somerville residents so they can move into these jobs, and targeting particular groups of workers to make sure everybody had an opportunity to move forward. Here are ways that we would target particular areas. So retrofitting, transportation. The care infrastructure is something that, as you know, Biden really emphasized, but it's been cut out of the infrastructure bill as of now, but we hope to get it back in the third bill that's coming along. Facilities and equipment operation management, maintenance, a big source of employment for people. And again, we want to reuse, redistribute, repurpose building materials as much as possible. Conclusion, we think this is really exciting and important in several areas. We think it's a chance for Somerville to renew the built environment and to get away from the dependence on fossil fuels, which are damaging to the environment, to reliance on renewable energy that saves the environment. Second, we think it's a chance to create thousands of new well-paying jobs for which people can be prepared. It will raise the standard of living in the city and promote social, economic, and racial equality, one of our big goals. And last but not least, Somerville can become a model, it really can, of a local Green New Deal that can be emulated by other cities and around the country. And that's it.
Thank you, Judy.
Now, I remembered something, and I have to apologize. Greg, I know you're on, and Greg was going to give us one quick example. Half a minute, Greg, I'm sorry, where you can just explain one issue that illustrates the kind of equity goal that we want to try to reach. Greg, you're on.
Thank you, Judy. I'm Greg Hill with the Show Already Working Group of Somerville Stands Together and assistant producer of Ed Halloran's Somerville Labor Show. I have here a brief commentary from Diane Wong of the Racial Justice Collaborative of Somerville, to wit. Recently, Bennett Chavaria of the Welcome Project and I stood on Mystic Ave listening to 93 noise and watching the traffic zipping by. Then we walked across the street to the other side of the 93 overpass. Across Mystic Ave is a beautiful green space with a wide river named Blessing of the Bay Park. The park is lovely with all lush green grass, picnic tables, and the flowing river, greatly contrasting with the bleak brick and concrete housing project across the street. Blessing of the park offers canoeing, kayaking, and nature exploring. I understand that children from the Mystic housing are not welcomed across the road and participate in the park's amenities. A beautiful park across the road and Somerville kids do not feel welcome. How can that be? The dangerous, fast-moving traffic of Mystic Ave creates a natural barrier that serves to keep out families from the housing project, and that's a manufactured barrier. In addition to the natural manufactured barrier of traffic noise from Mystic Ave, there is the constant noise from 93. There is no sound barrier in place on the Mystic Ave side of the natural border. The noise from the highway is loud, persistent, and a danger to health and sanity. Across the road and walk under the bridge, the noise quiets with the serene world of a gently flowing river. You find out why it is quiet on this side if you turn around and look up at the highway. On the Blessing side of the bay, on the Blessing side of the bay side of the Mystic Ave, there was a tall noise silencing wall all along the highway. The Blessing of the Bay Park is public, yet it is more like a private enclave for the better off section of Somerville. There should be kids from the Mystic Housing Project enjoying the garden-like park all summer and all winter. There should be a noise barrier on the Mystic Ave side of 93 to protect the health of Somerville public housing residents. I think it's essential to have specific equity projects in mind for Somerville communities of color. Let's ensure Blessing of the Bay Park lives up to its name. I trust candidates will pledge to correct this racial and social inequity that's right here in our city. Thank you, Diane Wong.
We're just a couple of minutes running over, but that was excellent. And I think everybody will appreciate those comments from Diane. So now we want to leave an opportunity for our three mayoral candidates to respond to what you've heard today from us, to ask any questions, talk about your somebody always calls, to talk about your responses to what you've heard. And then we will ask a few more questions and give you a chance to make a closing and summary statement. For this part of the program, I'm going to just keep you under 5 minutes. Don't feel free to be 3 minutes, but no more than 5 minutes to be fair to everybody, and so we can end on time. And so we'll start in alphabetical order. So that means we will begin with Katiana Valentine. Ms. Valentine?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and thanks so much for the presentation. The goals of Shovel Ready and the Somerville Climate Further Forward are super important, and I support all the effort and work that you have done on that, and certainly would do that as mayor. I've been working to combat climate issues for more than 2 decades. Personally, I've done it every possible way. I've advocated for the environment by working with transit improvements, transit-oriented mixed-use development, by writing the Somerville Green New Deal, which passed unanimously by the City Council in September 2019, co-authored the Green New Deal for Massachusetts. Now the Democratic Party passed and adopted unanimously in September 2019. And as City Council President, I hosted education series on the environment for all the counselors. I'm with you. I support this and have been very much involved. I also wanted to share that back in 2007, after the Green Communities Act was passed by the state legislature, I worked with 3 local community-based organizations. That's Alternatives for Community Environments, ACE and Nubian Square, Chinese Progressive Association in Chinatown, and Boston Workers Alliance to create green economy jobs in energy efficiency to start insulation contracting work. I am here with you supporting what you have worked on, and I've been working on similar issues for over a decade, and I look forward to continuing to be a partner in moving us forward. My climate change combat plan calls for carbon negative before 2050. Carbon neutrality, as soon as possible. I agree with you. And I'm happy to stand with you at all your events, as I was also at the Labor Climate Summit in September of 2020. I'm happy to commit to your climate proposals as they are consistent with the climate legislation that I've worked on. I'm the only candidate that has a comprehensive combating climate change plan, which calls for carbon negative. So I am curious, and I'm happy to be a partner on this and advance this. What feedback do you have on the Somerville Green New Deal from 2019 and my climate plan for carbon negative to make sure that we amplify, Somerville and its green future?
Well, thank you, Katiana. And I want to especially appreciate your brevity. You came in well under the time. And I think we'd definitely like to follow up with you on having that dialogue. But just to keep things rolling along and alphabetical order, I'm going to give Mary Casesso, candidate for mayor, a opportunity to respond to what she's heard. Mary?
Yes, and I'm trying to make sure I don't go over. Thank you. I have to say, this is one of the most exciting projects and inspiring projects. And I especially love the complete integration on social justice, racial justice, and equity. And it so much reflects the work that I've done since I was a young girl in Somerville. While I wasn't by the Mystic Development, I was in East Somerville, where we also have the highway, the psychological barrier, the noise pollution, and as I make a joke, and hence my loud voice, I know what it's like to be exposed to health issues. I know what it's like to fight for health justice. We did not even have healthcare in East Somerville and no pediatrician for the large population. So in so many ways, the work that you're doing with the complete integration in racial justice, health equity is so consistent with the work I've done all my career. 80 to 90% of our health is what's happening in the community. It's what's happening with jobs, and there are elements of this plan that make certain we're developing good jobs. And in fact, we've continued that work into medical school, making sure people know about climate injustice and the impact it's having on health. I think we should even start in the younger grades, understanding climate justice, and have the parents have opportunities internship. So I can't congratulate the breadth and the integration of the work of everybody here. And thank you, Greg, for those examples, and Ed Halloran, who has the heart of gold in terms of the work and commitment he does with labor in Somerville. I'm very excited by working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And next, our last candidate, Will Emba. Will, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ron. I'm really thrilled to be here. I guess, how much time do I have, Ron?
5 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you.
And your other candidates have been a model of brevity.
Gotcha. No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to say, I'm really thrilled to be here today. When I heard about this forum, it was really a lot of excitement because, this is an issue that I've dedicated my professional and personal life, to. As a young boy, I saw the impact of fossil fuel extraction in my community, which led to me pursuing a career in environmental science. And when I moved to Somerville, I put that degree to work, by volunteering with community organizations like CAFE, which stands for Community Assessment of Freeway Exposure and Health, just to understand the impact of pollution had on our community. So it was easy for me to see that pollution in Somerville mostly impacted working class and communities of color. The same thing is happening with climate change. These marginalized communities are the ones that are feeling the impact of climate change and will feel it hardest in the future. I know this because I'm part of these marginalized communities. And I know from firsthand experience how this issue is connected with housing justice and racial justice. There has been progress on some of these issues, but it has not happened quick enough. So I have a few questions as I listen to this presentation today. I want to ask, first, how does your group plan to bring new voices to the table for this kind of planning? You've talked about all the different equity components and stuff like that. So that is one question I have. I don't know if it's a time back and forth response. I would love to get a response, but if not, I can ask another follow-up question. A related question is that which groups of people have been missing from this work so far? Because I want to help bring them in. It's something that I'm really interested in. This is a work that I'm really passionate about, and I want to see, to make sure that we all have this, bring in the voices that are missing, and to have to be inclusive and really pragmatic in the work that we are trying to do. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Will. I think actually what we can do now is spend a little bit of time, because everybody's been so brief. We can spend a little bit of time before we go to the final question and wrap up. Does anybody from the Somerville Stands Together working groups or anybody else want to respond to what Tatiana asked and what Will has asked, or do we just want to do that in the follow-up? We have a few minutes.
Ryan?
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Just to respond to Will's commentary, we have worked to include Just Us Somerville and also the Racial Justice Collaborative of Somerville via Diane Wong. So and of course the Welcome Project with Francisca and Ben have also been active members of this effort. And we're never going to stop, working to make sure that equity is one of the banners that we raise and keep up there. It's not just a word to us; it is a goal
and a commitment.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, just to begin with, Somerville Stands Together is a coalition of community and labor groups, about 25 groups all in all, and a pretty good mix of diversity within the coalition. So we're pretty proud of that, and we're pretty proud of the process that we've had so far, but we need to strive to do better. And I see in the chat a question from Katiana. Katiana, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rand. And to build on what Will said, I also had a question about the vulnerable community. So thank you for answering that. But I'm wondering is that if the communities and the families that are living, a third of the subsidized housing units, nearly a third of the subsidized housing units are in Ward 7. So have any of those groups, and they're very diverse, been asked, or any of the Mystic families been asked to participate? And I just wanted to share on the city council side, I put in a number of legislative orders that ask that the administration include an equity consultant in reviewing the summer vision plans and the climate portion, because that was the next step to the Somerville Climate Forward, because there was talk that not enough voices, and the voices who are most affected, were at the table. And in addition, you know, as city council president, I created the Committee on Equity for Gender, Families, and Vulnerable Populations. That is also a forum that could be used on the city council for you all to amplify the focus on this. So I'm interested ultimately in, you know, whether the groups along in Ward 7 along Alewife Brook Parkway and the Mystic housing Mystic Ave area have been included in the crafting of these documents and or any future steps. Thank you.
Somebody from one of the working groups want to respond, or should we just follow up? Judy, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just want to say that the answer is no so far to both of you. We have just begun, and we started just with our Somerville Stands Together representatives, as Rand described. So the next step, obviously, is to take this out not only more to the city council and the government, but to community organizations. So I need to call on you and the other and a number of people in SST to tell us who to include and to start meeting with other groups. And I personally would welcome your continued input into how to do that and who to develop partnerships with.
Thanks, Judy. Let me give Mary Casesso a chance, and then we're going to have a question from Larry Rich and a chance for us to wrap up, because we have a city council forum immediately following this. Okay. So far, I'm super impressed with all of you. Mary?
Thanks, Rand. And Greg had his hand up also.
I saw.
I just wanted to mention that having convened a lot of groups in not only Somerville, but the 7 Metro North communities, we have had a lot of effectiveness, including our interfaith council groups. And they are so willing to get involved, and they bring they're a trusted source to the community that gets involved. And especially when we're talking about issues related to race and equity, I wanted to mention that. And I wanted to underscore what Judy said about the network of all the community-based organizations that already exist to tap into so that continuum continues. So that's been my experience.
Greg, one comment, and we'll move to Larry's question.
Yeah, just to respond to Katyana's question, we have involved the Mystic through the Welcome Project in Ben Echeverria, and Francesca Sepulveda, who is here, I can confirm that she works with the Welcome Project and is also the executive director of the Somerville Workers Center. And Francesca has had a lot of input on our work and goals here. Thank you.
I see a hand from Will, and then is that a hand up to speak, Will? Yeah.
Yes.
Sure,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yes,
question or comment, and then we'll go to a question from Larry.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate this conversation. And the question I asked is just for us to, like spark a conversation, because this is everything you've all put together. This is as inclusive as it can get, but of course it's not perfect. And so one of the other questions I also have again is that which groups of people with job insecurity do you see as the most needful of these jobs? So do you have any thoughts on those?
Maybe I can take a crack at that. Job insecurity is been made much worse by the pandemic. And, I think we're seeing a lot of uncertainty in the labor market. And clearly, people at the lower income spectrum in the job market are most adversely affected by the pandemic and by economic insecurity. And so, that's where you have to begin. That's where you have to begin. But I think I can speak for Somerville Stands Together to say that we want to see pathways into good union jobs, better apprenticeship programs, training programs, so that people can have a future that they can believe in, and that we're lifting people up out of poverty. And what's been lacking in this city is a commitment to that kind of economic development that prioritizes the creation of good jobs and then making sure that those jobs are apportioned equitably. And, we want to see local hire. We want companies in Somerville and the city to be able to hire locally. We don't want to mandate that, but we want to make sure that people are passing the laugh test, and not just for the $15 an hour jobs, but for the middle management and upper level jobs as well, so that people in Somerville have careers that they can look forward to. So I'll leave it at that. I want to turn it over to Larry Rich, a longtime member of Somerville, Our Revolution Somerville, and a steady hand here in the SST coalition. Larry, unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm Larry Rich, and as Rand said, from Our Revolution Somerville as well as SST. The question I have of the candidates is, can you embrace the program as you've heard it today?
That's a blunt question.
Yes, yes, absolutely. With enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
Let me just give it to Will, and then to Mary, and then to Katiana to wrap up. Not only reflecting on whether you can embrace the goals, because I think we've heard that, but anything you want to add about your vision for taking Somerville further forward and being shovel ready and implementing a municipal Green New Deal at the local level here, which is, like we hope, will be a model not only in Massachusetts, but nationally. Will Embaugh.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you. And so just to Larry Rich question, yes, absolutely. This is something, I want to say, that is even what I'm running for mayor, to accelerate our community's progress on these issues and change the conversation, even around climate change. Because the current Climate Forward plan to address climate change is a good start that you guys have mentioned at the presentation today, but it's not enough, So that is why on my first day as mayor, I would direct the Office of Sustainability and Environment to update that plan. As you guys have clearly stated, if there's more work to be done, we need to tackle it head on. And if we are going to be serious about combating climate change, any plan must have benchmarks and accountability measures. And as mayor, I will use zoning in support for community benefits agreement to help meet these goals. Finally, if there's one thing we have learned tonight, is that Somerville cannot wait for a Green New Deal. And you can be assured that when we implement a Green New Deal for Somerville and transition our city to green energy, our neighbors, our people will be at the front and center of this plan. Because I'm the only candidate in this race, that I've said I'm not accepting money from any real estate developer. When I'm mayor, our city's work to prepare for the impact of climate change will not be just an exercise in profiteering for construction companies and developers. This work will be centered around the people who are being most impacted by climate change. I have to tell you, right now, the most marginalized and vulnerable in Somerville do not have a seat at the table, but developers and special interests from outside of our community. And I'm committed and I can say this as mayor, if I'm elected, I'm going to change that. I'm really grateful that we have smart, talented community members like you guys that brought us here to have this conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Will. Mary?
Yes, thank you. I want to mention that the work that Doug Brugge did with CAFE, my family was intimately involved in, and they're quoted regularly. So since I was a young child in Somerville and we fought unsuccessfully to depress the I-93 structure, the issue of fighting for social justice, health equity has been part of my DNA. And I have spent my entire career working on all these public health issues that are integrated. Even the food system that we're working with, we have folks at CHA working on climate justice, but also teaching about the changes it's making in the health of our families in Somerville and beyond. And I love when everyone talks about working more regionally as well. But this is a public health crisis, and this group offers such a detailed plan with benchmarks that enable a scorecard. The city of Somerville should be the convener and leader, but based on the work of so many incredibly talented people. I get especially excited coming from a union family all these years of seeing the opportunities for work, both from a technical trade school, but also in the high school. I know at Cambridge Health Alliance, I work to embrace high school students taking on jobs and getting exposure to careers. I know for the dental assisting program at the high school, I brought in dentists and hygienists to enrich the curricula, while concurrently we were dealing with oral health disease of unaccompanied minors who had never seen a dentist. So what I love about this plan is the complete integration, good jobs, health equity, and not just for the kids. I want to say, I think the parents, but also other adults in the city should benefit through the new resources at the high school from this learning. And I think we need curricula on climate justice at the early end. And finally, I agree with Will, wholeheartedly, racial justice and diversity, that has been a lifelong pursuit of mine in every job I've ever worked, and we still need to do much, much more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Katiana, the last comment from you. And
Thank
then
you.
I'm going to turn it over to Ed Halloran. Katiana?
Thank you. I just want to start out by correcting the facts. I too, from the very beginning of my campaign, have committed not to take developer money, nor have I. So I want to be very clear about that. There's more than one candidate here. My accomplishments on the environment have made Somerville a national leader in combating climate change and restoring our urban ecosystem. My climate change combat plan calls for carbon negative Somerville by 2050, not just carbon neutral, but negative. Please check it out on katiana.org. I wrote the Somerville Green New Deal that was passed unanimously by the City Council in 2019. I co-wrote the Green New Deal for Massachusetts Now that was adopted by the State Democratic Committee. I sponsored the LEED Platinum building efficiency requirement for our new zoning code. It passed unanimously by the City Council in December 2019. And I sponsored the native planting ordinance, the only ordinance in the country. It took us 3.5 years to get this through that requires minimums of native species. I've led the fight against climate change in Somerville for nearly 3 decades, and I lead by example. I walk the talk. A little about me. I was born and orphaned in Greece, adopted there by a Scottish father and a Czech-German mother. We are a family of immigrants, and I immigrated to the States when I was 4. I learned then that sometimes people are afraid of differences. I was sometimes ridiculed and excluded because of my differences. It could have been an accent, our foods, or just simply our culture. My immigrant experience has taught me to value differences and include everyone. I was the first in my family to go to college. I worked 2 jobs, took out loans to get a BA and an MBA. I moved to Somerville in '93, and I have deep gratitude that my husband, Rick, and I planted our roots and raised our 2 daughters here. I have over 30 years of professional experience in international management, startups, nonprofits, developing affordable housing, connecting local people to local jobs, workforce development, violence prevention, and 7 years on the city council, twice elected city council president. So finally, our next mayor must have 3 qualities to do the job we expect and deserve. A commitment to our culture's inclusive leadership style and proven experience. I best bring those qualities to the office of mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katiana, and thank you to all of the candidates. Ed Halloran. Got to unmute yourself, Ed. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I should know that. Right? I should know that, yes. Well, I have to say I'm very impressed. Really enjoyable for me. I want to thank the 3 candidates because I know them and I think they're doing great work, working very hard. It's a daunting task. And, really, thank you so much for being here for this. I also want to thank Somerville Stands Together because without them, there's so many things that I wouldn't have been involved in. And I found that this is really, for me, being with them is like one of my passions now because we've been together for a while. And they're a grassroots organization. They will, if there's a fight, they're going to take it on and they're not going to walk away from it if it's the right fight and it's a good fight. I've had the pleasure of interviewing many of them. And they get it. They really do get it. They've helped my union achieving our goals, and they've worked with many other groups in the city on things like wage theft and a workers' center. Can you imagine a workers' center in Somerville, which is wonderful, where people can go. And also, the last industrial, place like Royal Hospitality workers, trying to help them from displacement. So if there's a fight out there, I mean, SST is involved. So this is a worthy cause for all of us. This is a worthy cause for me to be involved in. I can't say enough about, Somerville Stands Together. They're all wonderful people. And I thank them very much for allowing me to be part of this as well. Long before the pandemic, I just want to say long before the pandemic, they were working on this presentation for a very, very long time. And I want to thank them for, we understand that these are improvements that we've made that are good for us and good for the city. And one final comment too about apprenticeships. More apprenticeships are needed. People of color, people who English is their second language, we need to help them. We need to help them further, more. I represent a union. I know it. I see it. I get it. If their second language, they learn differently, and let's get that done. So also in the end, I would like to say that if you want to come to an SST meeting, you are cordially invited anytime. But our next meeting is going to be on August 23rd at 4 p.m. And thank you all very much. And thank you, Rand. Back to you.
Thanks, Ed. And thanks to all of the members of the 2 working groups and people that participated in our Labor Climate Change Summit, almost 2 years ago. It's been a long and very, very interesting road. I've learned so much from everybody, and we continue to learn from each other. Somerville is about to have a really exciting new chapter with new leadership, and I look forward to whomever becomes the next mayor of Somerville to work with our working groups and with the Somerville Stands Together Coalition to bring the city further forward and to make us shovel ready. And with that, thanks very much, everybody, and especially to our mayoral candidates who kept to all the time limits. It bodes well for the city of Somerville that we have this kind of disciplined candidates. Really very, very nice. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll start the city council forum at 6:15. I'm going to crack a beer. Bye-bye.